الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, we praise Allah abundantly and we ask Allah to exalt the mention and grant peace and send His salutations upon the seal of the prophets and the final messenger, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. As to what follows, this would be the second lesson and a continuation of what we initiated a few weeks ago on the book Kitab Tawheed, specifically with the sharh of Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah. And by Allah's grace, we dealt with the introduction of the Shaykh, and then the explanation of the first few sentences of the actual book, the Matan, right? And that's one thing we should be familiar with. We should be familiar with the term Matan and the term Sharh. You will often come across these in Arabic. Matan is the actual text of the author, and Sharh is the explanation of this text. So you find that the scholars of old, their knowledge and their understanding was so vast and advanced that they would use a small number of words which will have tremendous meanings. And therefore, scholars would come after them and write an explanation of that precise and concise text and elaborate and expand and explain what is necessary. So Kitab al-Tawheed as a matan is not a great book in size. It's not a big book. But the sharh here is in 2 volumes. For what you can get as small as this. You can buy the small version of the book of Kitab al-Tawheed, you can put in your front pocket. We're dealing with the sharh of Shaykh Fawzan. We discussed the linguistic meaning of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and we addressed the term Tawheed, and we said that it's masdar from wahada, Tawheedan, and which is basically the meaning is to single out Allah Azza wa Jalla in worship. Today we'll be dealing with the categories of Tawheed. Now I know most of you have heard them, I hope so at least, but what we want to really relate to here is not merely the memorization. See, when these issues are addressed, they can either be addressed academically, or they can be addressed spiritually, or they can be addressed academically and spiritually. We have 2 extremes. One extreme is to address it academically. Memorize, revise, and then, show us what you have learned. And you can cite this evidence and so on and so forth. But it may not necessarily affect our iman. The other extreme is those people who have deviated from the path of acquiring knowledge. And their main concern is spirituality, which is good, provided that that spirituality is founded on sound knowledge. So to be indulging in matters of spirituality without having the knowledge base will eventually lead someone astray. And this is what happened among many of the groups which we have today. They speak about tazkiyah and the purification of the soul and so on and so forth, but there's no knowledge on which they can base this, and so they wind up causing more damage than good, even though they intended good. So having the sound knowledge base is a fundamental condition for the success of the believer. So we want to deal with this academically and spiritually, so we can actually benefit, so that when we leave this masjid, inshallah, we will have a better iman than when we walked in. And at the same time, we would be familiar with the breakdown of the ulama of these basics, the basics of the deen. The Shaykh said, وَالتَّوْحِيدُ ثَلَاثَةُ أَنْوَاعٍ عَلَى سَبِيلِ التَّفْصِيلِ. Tawheed is of 3 categories if we were to go into detail. النوع الأول توحيد الربوبية. The first kind is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. How would we translate that roughly? I know there's a lot of leeway or flexibility in terms of choice of words. A person may prefer a particular word over another. ما في مشكلة, not going to differ. But according to you, brothers, what do you think? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. How does that? How would that sound in English? Iman. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Wrong answer. Nice try. If it were a 3-point shot, you would have made it in the basket. Anybody else? Huh? Lordship? You? Oneness? Okay, good. That one will slide. Maintaining the oneness and uniqueness of Allah in terms of His Lordship. Very basic. Allah being the Lord, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the problem we have is the term Lord in English, or the term Lord among Christians, has many connotations. Many connotations. And according to some Christians, Jesus was called Lord. And He approved it. According to the Bible, He approved it. So this brings about some sort of conflict when we use the term Lord. But if we were to go, and that, of course the term Lord has its other meaning in the English language, like, you know, Lord Fulan and Lord Fulana and whatever. Or it couldn't be a Fulana. But among the British, I believe they have some sort of, this name is used as a title for some people. So some people objected and said we shouldn't use the term Lord anymore. And we should use the term Rabb instead. And they made this a point, and they use it in their books, and they avoid the term Lord completely and stick to the word Rabb. But for whatever reason, they fail to know that the term Rabb in Arabic has exactly the same usages and connotations as in English. You say in Arabic, Rabbul Bayt. Rabbul Bayt meaning the owner or the person in charge of this household. Rabbul Amal is the person who is running or in charge of this business. And if you read Surah Yusuf, alayhi salam, the term Rabb was used to refer to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. Irji' ila Rabbik. He told him, Yusuf said to the one to whom he interpreted the dream, he said, go back to your master and tell him such and such and such. So even in the Quran, the term Rabb was used to refer to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. So to make this big deal out of not using the term Lord and say we're going to stick to the term Rabb, when the term Rabb has the same exact connotations as Lord, is pointless. You might as well say Lord, because the people understand. And when we mean Lord, we mean, as the Shaykh will explain, let me just let the Shaykh explain, وهو إفراد الله تعالى بالخلق والرزق والتدبير والإحياء والإماتة وتدبير الخلائق. We mentioned that actually. We mentioned that. I think we stopped at this paragraph. Basically, just to review, it's to maintain the oneness and uniqueness of Allah Azza wa Jal in terms of Him being the creator, being the sustainer, being the one who grants life and the one who causes death, and the one who harms and the one who benefits. وهذا النوع من أقر به وحده لا يكون مسلما. Very important point. This type of Tawheed, whosoever acknowledges it alone is not a Muslim. Why? Someone says Allah is the creator, Allah is the sustainer, Allah is the provider, Allah is the sovereign. I believe in all of that. But we say that alone is not enough for you to become a Muslim. How could that be? Huh? The mushrikeen used to say that? Which mushrikeen? Huh? Pagans of Mecca? Do you have an evidence? Fantastic. We have actually numerous evidences, not only one, ayat, and the Shaykh will cite some of them, ayat, to the effect that if you were to ask them, who created the heavens and the earth? Who is Allah speaking about? The kuffar of Quraysh. He's telling the Prophet ﷺ, if you were to ask these kuffar, who created the heavens and earth? لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ لَا يَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. They will surely, inevitably, and with the noon of tawqeed, of emphasis, they will say Allah. The Shaykh said, لأنه قد أقر به الكفار. The disbelievers themselves have acknowledged and admitted this kind of tawheed. كما ذكر الله جل وعلا في القرآن في آيات كثيرة. As Allah, the exalted in might, has mentioned in numerous ayat. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. And if you were to ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will say Allah. قل من يرزقكم من السماء والأرض أمن يملك السمع والأبصار ومن يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ومن يدبر الأمر فسيقولن الله فقل أفلا تتقون. Say, who provides you from the heavens and the earth, or who owns the hearing and the sight, and who brings the live from the dead, and who brings the dead from the live, and who arranges the affairs? They shall say to you, Allah. Say then, do you not then protect yourself from His punishment? Do you not then fear Him? So the kuffar acknowledge that Allah is the one who provides from the heavens and the earth. He owns the hearing and the sight. He brings the life from the dead and the dead from the live, and He arranges the affairs. See, they acknowledge all of the rububiyyah. But the Prophet ﷺ fought against them because they did not become Muslims by merely saying that. أَمَّا يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ وَمَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The Shaykh cited other ayat as well. إلى غير ذلك من الآيات التي أخبر الله أن المشركين يقرون بأن الله هو الخالق والرازق والمحيي والمميت. ومع هذا لا يكونون مسلمين. لماذا؟ لأنهم لم يأتوا بالنوع الثاني الذي هو مدار المطلوب. And other ayat of the sort wherein the polytheists admitted and acknowledge that Allah is the creator and provider and the giver of life and the one who causes death. Yet they're not Muslims. Why? Because they failed in fulfilling the second kind of tawheed. And the whole thing revolves around the second kind, the second kind of tawheed. I'll give you an example. You get hired by a company. Of course, I always give these examples because most of us, probably work somewhere, and therefore you can relate to these examples. You get hired by a company, and this company has a CEO, right? Not right? Okay. Now, you acknowledge that he is the CEO because you have no choice. However, you don't listen to him, and you don't obey him, and you don't do what he tells you. In fact, you take another manager or another CEO, even though there isn't such a CEO. You just bring some guy from the street. You say, you know what, man? You're nicer than our CEO, so you will be my CEO. You tell me what to do, I will do it. So he tells you, do this, don't do that, and you start doing everything he wants. And then the real CEO is like, excuse me, I hired you to work for me, and you need to listen to what I say. If you want to work for this other CEO, leave and start your own business with him. But as long as you acknowledge me as the CEO, then what are you expected to do as an employee? Obey. Very basic. Similarly, and of course greater than that, is the example with the slaves of Allah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they say, okay, we believe Allah is the creator, sustainer, provider, but we will dedicate our worship to other than Allah Azza wa Jal, then they just like this employee who you would fire, who you would punish. Maybe you call the shurta, have him arrest him, call the jawazat, tell him to get him, send him back home. I mean, you may do all kinds of things to get revenge for this silly, ridiculous employee who wasted your money and wasted your resources and wasted your time and did not do anything of the things which were delegated to him, because whatever he was told, he did not accept. Yet he was giving this effort and the time he was spending for someone else. Was that a picture, Ya Mhandis? Delete it, Habibi, barakallah feek. You can take a video, akhi, but if a camera, you may get a virus on your camera, and it will never work again. I have this kind of face. It's a virus face. Of course, because I follow the position that taking pictures is not allowed. That's why. The virus thing is extra. Anyways, yeah. What were you saying? Naam, so this is the same thing. It's this bad employee. So once you acknowledge the CEO, then you're supposed to do what he tells you. If you don't like it, what do? If you don't want to accept the CEO, if you don't want to say, I don't want to listen to him, I don't want to obey him, I don't want to do anything this manager tells me, what do? You quit. You quit your job, you resign. Say, I can't do this. Either you stay as an employee, therefore it's binding on you to do what he tells you, or you quit your job. But to stay there is ludicrous. And that's what's happening. النوع الثاني توحيد الألوهية. Who will translate this one? Yalla, before the people fall asleep. Huh? Tawheed al-uluhiyya. Monsieur, you with the smile. I can smile too. Any answers? Tawheed al-uluhiyya. It's not rocket science. How about the guy next to you? Mr. Blue guy. Muhandis Pirelli. ما في؟ إبراهيم؟ Thank you very much. Now. Okay. So Tawheed, we said, maintaining the oneness and uniqueness. Tawheed is maintaining the oneness and uniqueness. And oneness because Allah is one, and unique because He's unique in His oneness. Because being one is not necessarily special. Someone may lose 9 fingers and stay with one. Okay? It doesn't mean that this is something good necessarily, right? Or for many men, they say, I only have one wife. Not necessarily good for a brother. You know, one is not always good. It becomes something special when it's unique. You can have one phone, but that one phone you have, another 3 million people have it. But if you have one unique phone, meaning your phone is different than everybody else's. Why are you laughing? You like that wife joke, huh? Make sure you don't tell it to the sisters. Some jokes you should never tell to the sisters. Oh, they are sisters here. Never mind. So maintaining the oneness and uniqueness of Allah. In terms of uluhiyya, we said uluhiyya from ilah. And ilah is the one who is worshipped. Therefore, the brother said ibadah. Meaning the ibadah, the acts of worship, the enslavement of the slave to the one who created the slave. So that means that because Allah is the creator, sustainer, provider, cherisher, giver of life, causer of death, because He is in such control, it is inappropriate and impossible and illogical to worship other than Him. Because of these qualities of rububiyyah, we establish the ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because anything other than that will be ridiculous. Why am I saying that? What does Allah say? وَمَنْ يَرْغَبْ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. Subhanallah. And who else would turn away from the way of Ibrahim except for one who has been fooled to himself, has fooled himself, someone who is foolish. So Allah gave the title of Safih, someone who is foolish, someone who is dumb, in other words, to the person who turns away from the millah of Ibrahim. وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. That's an amazing description, by the way. And read the tafsir of this particular ayah. that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, in the Quran. Anyways, so it's only logical then that we do so. The Shaykh said, Ifradullah Ta'ala bil-ibadah. هذا غير إفراده بالخلق والرزق والتدبير. This is not similar or equal to maintaining His oneness and uniqueness in terms of creating, sustaining and arranging the affairs. Meaning that is a degree, and then the Tawheed of Uluhiyyah is of a higher degree, or a stage afterwards. Once you have that there, then you can build on it and go to the next one. It is not identical to it, in other words. بل إفراد الله بالعبادة بأن لا يعبد إلا الله سبحانه وتعالى, which it boils down to that you worship none but Allah. ولا يصلى. Sounds weird, huh? Who can explain this Arabic word? Why does it say يصلى? Now we have the word يصلي. صح؟ يصلي فلان يصلي أحمد يصلي صلاة المغرب. He's praying. It's the present tense. The present tense. So what is this يصلى? Where did that come from? And why would words begin with a dhamma on the first vowel and end with this alif maqsura or fatha? It is when the word is in a passive voice, known in Arabic as mabni lil majhul. Mabni lil majhul, for example. It's a form of the word which is, like you say, this place was built in 1959. You didn't mention, for example, who built it. This is considered the passive voice in English. The active voice is Ahmad built this masjid in 1959, for example. In Arabic we have something similar, something along the same lines. So you can mention something, or you can use the verb. Even if you mention the doer, still the very usage of that kind of verb is considered the passive voice. So the Shaykh said, لا يصلى, meaning it shouldn't be prayed. Yani no one should pray to other than Allah. لا يصلى ولا يدعى, and no one should be called, no one should be prayed to, no one should be supplicated to. ولا يذبح, and nothing should be slaughtered. وَلَا يُنذَرْ, and no vows should be made. وَلَا يُحَجْ, and no hajj should be performed. وَلَا يُعْتَمَرْ, and no umrah should be performed either. وَلَا يُتَصَدَّقْ, nor a sadaqah should be given, or a charity. وَلَا إِلَى آخِرِهِ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ, and nothing else of any ibadah you can think of except to Allah. Except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sacrificing an animal is for the sake of Allah only. And doing umrah and hajj are for the sake of Allah. And salah and siyam and zakah, every single act of worship cannot possibly be dedicated to anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يُبْتَغَى بِذَلِكَ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah's face is sought. Allah's countenance subhanahu is sought in the process. وَهَذَا هُوَ الَّذِي وَقَعَتِ الْخُصُومَةُ فِيهِ بَيْنَ الرُّسُلِ وَالْأُمَمِ. Amazing. And this is the very thing which caused the enmity and the dispute between the messengers and their respective nations. What caused them to fight? Rububiyyah? Rububiyyah was the reason why the Rusul, Tawheed Rububiyyah was the reason why the Rusul fought with their nations. They agreed on that to a large extent. Of course, there are some people who even deny Rububiyyah. Not everybody believes in it. But predominantly, the kuffar, specifically those of Quraysh, their issue was not Rububiyyah. They did not believe that we came out of nothing, nor did they believe that, Allat wal-Uzza wa Manat and all these, they were actually creators. They did not believe so. The evidence is many statements from the Quran. قالوا هؤلاء شفعاؤنا عند الله. They said, no, these are only our intercessors عند Allah, with Allah. So they acknowledge the existence of Allah Azza wa Jalla. However, they claim that these idols and statues whom they were worshipping, they weren't really worshipping them. They were only trying to seek nearness to Allah through these objects of worship, who they claimed were their shufa'a, their intercessors. And they said in another ayah, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَا إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. We don't worship them except that we wished for them to get us closer to Allah. So it wasn't about rububiyyah that they fought. It was about uluhiyyah. أما الأول فما وقعت فيه خصومة. As for the first one, there was no such dispute. لأن الأمم مقرة بأن الله هو الخالق الرازق. Because the nations in general admit that Allah is the creator, sustainer. المحيي المميت, the giver of life, the causer of death. المدبر, the arranger of affairs. ولم ينكر توحيد الربوبية إلا شذاذ من الخلق. No one denied Tawheed al-Rububiyyah except some abnormalities, some real astray people among the creation. But nowadays they have become a lot. Who among the kuffar now denies Rububiyyah? Huh? Atheists. Who else? Communist? Darwinist, like Darwinism? Good. No, I mean, they have a whole other thing. That monkey stuff. Anyways. Who else? Buddhists? Well, I mean, you see, these people have different denominations, so we won't generalize. But I was waiting for someone to what do you think about the Jews? The Jews, do they acknowledge Rububiyyah or do they deny it? Some do and some don't. But if he's a real Jew, he acknowledges it. Yeah, a real Jew? No. And these secularists now, he can be a Christian, Jew or anything else, but he's really a secularist. And they take on different forms. The Jews, Christians, no issue. Now, they fall into the, besides uluhiyyah, they also have problems with asma and sifat, as we will see. Specifically the Jews. The Jews are infamous for giving Allah Azza wa Jal attributes which do not befit His Majesty. And of course the Christians learned from them and took it a step further, as it is their habit. They always go that extra mile in the wrong direction. It's nice to go the extra mile in the right direction, but the Christians will always go the extra mile in the wrong direction. Therefore you find them ending up with all kinds of stuff that no one ever preceded him with. Just outlandish, bid'ah and ideologies and belief and dogmas that are just strange. Least to say strange. They love to do it. Subhanallah. So the Shaykh said, أنكروه في الظاهر ولكنهم مستيقنون به في الباطن. They only deny it outwardly. Those, the astray people, the minority who deny Allah's rububiyyah, only outwardly. Inwardly, they know it for certain. And any human being will know for certain that there's Rabb. But how can we prove to someone? If someone says, look, we know deep down, you must believe in Allah. He says, prove it to me. How can we prove it to that person from the Quran and Sunnah? You can't be given da'wah without these things. MashaAllah. That's one ayah. وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْ أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. صح? Jahadu is to deny, to reject knowingly. They knowingly rejected. وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ, while they themselves within had certainty. ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا, out of oppression and seeking a higher status in this dunya, seeking to some achievement in this dunya. That's one ayah. How about the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal took from the loins from Adam his children, right, his progeny, and He said to them in the Quran, أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ, am I not your Lord? قَالُوا بَلَى. They said, yes, you are. Then the Prophet ﷺ said that كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. Every newborn is born upon this natural disposition. this human innate nature, that there's a creator. It's nonsensical to claim otherwise. And you will find, as one of the du'at mentioned, which is a very good observation, you will find that most of these atheists are atheists because of some event that happened to them in their life which they couldn't really deal with, and so they decided to become atheists. There's some trauma in their life which they didn't have enough iman or enough understanding or enough whatever the reason may be, and so they became atheists because they failed in understanding that event, or because someone really wants to have such a blast and the very feeling of responsibility is just horrible. So the only way to get over that guilt trip is by telling yourself that there's no accountability. So they really deny the Creator because they want to deny accountability. Otherwise, what are you going to deny about the Creator? I mean, come on now, are you kidding me? Look at the human beings, look at the universe. You're going to tell me this came from nothing? Or some molecules or some gravity or some nonsense? It's no way, man. They know. But they don't want to believe in Jannah, Jahannam, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Hisab. It's too much for them. So to party all night long and all day long, you just claim that you don't believe in God. Now, من ذلك فرعون وإن كان جحد وجود الرب سبحانه وتعالى قال أنا ربكم الأعلى. هذا في الظاهر. For example, Fir'aun outwardly denied the existence of Allah, to the extent that he said what? I am your Lord the Most High. Fir'aun is wild, man. Fir'aun was wild. I don't know what the guy was on back then, but he must have been on some really crazy stuff. How are you going to tell the people, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى? Can you imagine how grave this statement is? I am your Lord the Most High. So of course, what did Allah do to him? He put him under the water. He said, I am the Most High. He became the lowliest. What is among the lowliest ways to die in this sense? By being drowned, because you go down. Khalas, the bottom of the ocean. Can't really go beyond that unless you're going to go, through the earth crust down somewhere else. So from his statement, he was sent down all the way the opposite direction. And because he claimed that he was, the Lord, the Most High. But this was only outwardly. He's a liar. وَإِلَّا فَهُوَ يُقِرُّ فِي قَرَارَةِ نَفْسِهِ أَنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِرَبٍّ وَأَنَّهُ لَا يَخْلُقُ وَلَا يَرْزُقُ. This is only outwardly. Inwardly, he admits, he knows that he is not a Lord, and he knows also that he does not create nor does he provide. وَإِنَّمَا فِي قَرَارَةِ نَفْسِهِ يَعْتَرِفُ بِأَنَّ اللَّهُ هُوَ الْخَالِقُ الرَّازِقُ. And in deep within, he admits that Allah is the creator and the sustainer. كَذَلِكَ الشُّيُوعِيَّةِ. And of course, the evidence for that is that before Pharaoh died, during the agonies of death, the last moments of his life, what did he say? قَالَ آمَنْتَ بِالَّذِي آمَنَتْ بِهِ بَنُو إِسْرَائِيلِ. He said, I have believed in the one in whom Bani Israel have believed in. And the ulama said that he was in such a humiliating, he was so humiliated at this point that he didn't have the courage or the ability to say Allah. He said, I believe in the one whom Bani Israel believed in. And of course, that didn't benefit him much, because it is too late. At that point, it is too late. Now, Iman will not benefit a soul when the soul is about to depart from the body. If someone gets sick and he repents some hours or a day before, no problem. But at that moment when you know you're going to die, when someone is going to die, they know they're going to die. Unless it's a sudden death, of course, accident or something. But someone in the hospital, already the events will appear. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna lil mawti la sakarat. He said, verily, death has this kind of intoxicating effect on the person. The person will know. And so, if they want to repent, then they won't be able to. Some of them want to say La ilaha illallah. They won't be able to either. And we think, we'll manage. It's a big deal. It's only one sentence. Even if no one tells me. I remember, subhanAllah, Allah doesn't grant this tawfiq except to His righteous slaves. Not everyone will be good. You may forget. A person may forget to say it, or a person may be reminded and be unable to say it. And we've heard this from many, many people involved in da'wah. Many mashayikh who were in a situation when a person was dying and they tried to remind the person of the shahada and the person could not utter the shahada. Some of them actually would sing their favorite song. The song that they were so fascinated with in this dunya, that's the only thing that will come to their mind. That's what the shaitan will bring. And there isn't enough iman to repel this kind of satanic whispering, and there isn't enough tathbeet from Allah Azza wa Jal for them to say the shahada, so they wind up dying with, tiriri tiriri, something like that. Khalas. End of story. Nasallahu al-afiyah. كذلك الشيوعية في عصرنا الحاضر جحدوها للرب. The Shuyu'iyya, the communists in this day and time, they also deny the lordship. هذا في الظاهر, but this is only outwardly. وإلا كل عاقل يعلم أن هذا الكون ما وجد من دون خالق. Otherwise, every rational person, every intelligent person knows that this universe could not have been brought into existence without a creator. ومن دون مدبر, nor without an arranger of affairs. وَمِن دُونِ مُوجِد, nor without a bringer into existence, the one who brings things into existence. أوجد. كل أبدا, never will someone think so. كل عاقل يعترف بتوحيد الربوبية. Every person who has a little bit of understanding, a little bit of brain, he will admit of the Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. أما توحيد الألوهية هذا قل من الخلق من أقر به. عجيب. A minority, a small number of people among the creation admit and acknowledge Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. ما أقر به إلا المؤمنون أتباع الرسل عليهم الصلاة والسلام. هم الذين أقروا به. Who are the only people who acknowledged it? The believers who believed in their respective messengers. How many people believe with Nuh? How many people believed with Nuh? How many people followed or believed in Nuh? Nuh Islam? Nuh alayhi salam, Nuh. 50, is that a guess or what? That's a nice one, brother. No, I didn't mean numbers actually. Just a few, yeah, exactly. I wasn't looking for numbers. That's why I'm wondering where do you get the 15 from. We'll talk to you later, inshallah. Come up with your own numbers, brother. 18. Who got 20? 21. You win. La. Not this one, a few. Qaleel. Allah described them as qaleel. Qillah. A minority. How many people believe with Ibrahim? According to one ayah in the Quran, none believed in them except Lut. وَمَا أَمَنَ لَهُ إِلَّا Lut. Only Lut believed with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And if you go through all the messengers which Allah Azza wa Jalla narrated, whose story Allah narrated, you will find that their followers were always a minority. This term was often repeated, qaleel. وَمَا آمَنُوا مَعَهُ إِلَّا qaleel. None believed in them except a minority. Who had a lot of followers? Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam. And you know the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salam that he saw a huge nation. He thought it was his and it was said to him, no, this is Musa. Then he saw a greater one and then it was said, this is your ummah. But that indicates that Musa alayhi salam had many followers. And many who had given him a hard time alayhi salatu salam. But nevertheless, so basically the common theme here is that it is a minority. And this is something very important for us to understand. To reinforce the idea that numbers are unimportant. Okay? Numbers, I mean in business I know numbers are important. But in matters of the deen, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu used to say, الحق ما وافق أو الجماعة ما وافق الحق ولو كنت وحدك. The Jama'ah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is whatever is in agreement with the truth, even if you're by yourself. Even if you're by yourself. It's not having many people. Now, one of the signs of the validity of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that it is widely accepted among the Muslims. in the early generations, but we were told that it will go through a time when those who are adhering to it will become strangers, as we dealt with in the lectures. Sahih? So now we're living in these times where the people who are actually on the Sunnah completely are a minority, and we're surrounded by all kinds of innovations and various, innovated ideologies and conflicts amongst each other. Jama'at, this jama'at, that jama'at, this leader has, all kinds of things are going on. So the being a minority is not necessarily blameworthy. It's not necessarily blameworthy. I mean, the number one student in class is only one student. Doesn't have to be 5. 1 is enough. But he's number 1. What matters is that he's number 1. So the Shaykh said, أما توحيد الألوهية نعم. أما عموم الكفار فإنهم ينكرون توحيد الألوهية. The majority of the kuffar, they deny the oneness and uniqueness of Allah in terms of His right to be worshipped, or Him being the only divine entity. بمعنى أنهم لا يفردون الله بالعبادة. They do not single Allah out in ibadah. حتى وإن أقروا بالنوع الأول هو توحيد الربوبية وإن عبدوا الله ببعض أنواع العبادة. Very important. Even if they acknowledge the first kind of Tawheed Rububiyyah, they haven't really established Tawheed Uluhiyyah, even though they may have some acts of worship. Like the Christians. A Christian may come and you say to him, what are you doing? He says, I'm calling on the Father. And in his mind, the Father is Allah, in a sense, that Allah is the creator. Of course, they say Jesus is the son of Allah. Sahih? وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They say Allah has taken a son. قالوا اتخذ الرحمن ولدا. نعم. So they give the Allah Azza wa Jalla this claim. So you find that they may actually do some acts of worship which may be purely for Allah Azza wa Jalla. But does that make him believers? No. Because shirk is of such that if you do one thing, it's the one sin which can ruin all of your good deeds. It's amazing. Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran in more than one occasion, after He mentioned the messengers and He was praising them, He was praising Yunus and praising Lut and praising Ibrahim and Yaqub and Yusuf alayhi salam. He mentioned all of them, and then He said at the end, وَلَئِنْ أَشْرَكُوا, and had they associated partners with Allah, then their deeds would have become invalid. لَحَبِطَ عَنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah said to the Prophet alayhi salam, لئن أشركت ليحبطن عملك ولتكونن من الخاسرين. If you were to commit shirk, then your deeds will be nullified and void, and you will be among the losers. So the one sin which can eradicate all of the good deeds single-handedly is shirk. Nas'alullah al-afiyah. That's why it's so dangerous, and that's why it's so important for Muslims to learn what is shirk and what is tawheed. Because this is the one thing we cannot afford to commit. Now, of course, if someone committed shirk and he repented to Allah, then Allah will accept the repentance even of the mushrik. It's not an issue. The problem is when we lead a life where shirk is integrated with our life, and then we die in this state, and then there's no tawbah. Then we have a whole other scenario. ولهذا لما قال لهم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قولوا لا إله إلا الله تفلحوا أو لا إله إلا الله تفلحوا. The Prophet ﷺ said to the kuffar, say لا إله إلا الله تفلحوا. What does تفلحوا mean? You will succeed. Okay, can we get a synonym? A synonym, a verb. Instead of succeed, can we find a nicer word? Profit? Like P-R-O-F-I-T? No. Profit from it? Prosper. Thank you, Mr. Huraira. That's the word I'm looking for. You will prosper. You will prosper. Succeed is fine. But prosper has that idea of growth. The growth. Whereas you may succeed in one thing and fail in the rest. But prosper suggests continuity in achievements. You keep prospering in prosperous nation and so on and so forth. Now, and profit is okay, brother. Don't get upset. But it wasn't what I was looking for. نعم. قالوا أجعل الآلهة إلها واحدا إن هذا لشيء عجاب. Now this was the answer, the reply of the Qurayshis when the Prophet ﷺ said to them, say la ilaha illallah, you will prosper. They said, as Allah quoted them in Surah Al-Qaf, no, not the Qaf, the other one, Sa'd. They said, has he made the aliha, has he made these objects of worship, ilahan wahidan, a single God? Inna hadha la shay'un ujab. This is something curious, this is something amazing, this is something wondrous, this is something strange. They thought it was strange, it was as odd that he has made the many gods they were worshipping a single God. How could the 360 idols around the Kaaba be destroyed and broken and thrown away, and then we're going to worship only one? This is amazing. How could you ask us to do something like that? What's amazing, of course, is their statement. Not what the Prophet ﷺ was calling them to. What he was calling them to is sound and logical. What is amazing and wild is their reply, as if it's something that is unusual to be called to Tawheed. وانطلق الملأ منهم أن امشوا واصبروا على آلهتكم إن هذا لشيء يراد. And then al-mala, meaning the leaders and the big heads among them marched forth, and they said to each other, اصبروا, be patient. Verily this is something that is desired. To be patient. Be patient in this time. This is a time of trials and tribulations. We're being called to Tawheed, and someone is trying to destroy our shirk. We need to be patient in remaining steadfast upon shirk. ما سمعنا بهذا في الملة الآخرة إن هذا إلا اختلاق. We haven't heard any of this in the previous among our forefathers. This is something that has been invented by the Prophet ﷺ. إِنَّا وَجَدْنَا أَبَاءَنَا عَلَى أُمَّةٍ. Same methodology. We found our forefathers upon this way. أَأُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ ذِكْرٌ مِّن بَيْنِنَا بَلْ هُمْ فِي شَكٍّ مِّن ذِكْرِي بَلْ لَمَّا يَذُوقُوا عَذَابِ. They said, has the remembrance been sent down, or the reminder, the dhikr, the Quran, has it been sent down upon him from amongst us? Yani, why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? This was what they were wondering. How come him? Allah said, rather they are in doubt in regards to my dhikr, but this is because they haven't, or when they will see the punishment, until they taste the punishment. أَمْ عِنْدَهُمْ خَزَائِنُ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّكَ الْعَزِيزِ الْوَهَابِ. Or do they hold, do they manage, do they operate, do they own the treasures of the mercy of your Lord, the Almighty and the Provider? فَهُمْ أَبَوْا أَن يَقُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ مَعَ أَنَّهُمْ يَعْتَرِفُونَ بِتَوْحِيدِ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ. They refuse then to say La ilaha illallah, even though they acknowledge the Tawheed of Rububiyyah. We will end inshallah right now. نعم. لكن أبوا أن يعترفوا بتوحيد الألوهية. So the problem was with توحيد الألوهية, not ربوبية. الذي هو إفراد الله بالعبادة, which is to single Allah عز وجل in worship. هم يقولون نحن نعبد الله ونعبد معه غيره من الشفعاء والوسطاء. Their manhaj was, we worship Allah, but we worship along with him others from among intercessors and intermediaries. Wusata, someone who will, a connection. الذين يقربونهم بزعمهم إلى الله زلفى, whom they claim, according to them, will get them closer to Allah. These intermediaries. اتخذوهم وسائط بزعمهم وأبوا أن يفردوا الله جل وعلا بالعبادة. So they took them as intermediaries and they refused to single Allah Azza wa Jal in worship. وقالوا لا تذرن آلهتكم. Who said this? Who said لا تذرن آلهتكم? Do not abandon your gods. Who said that? Before we close the Yalla, it's almost Isha. The people of Nuh. Now, you guys never memorized Surah Nuh? I'm going to be upset with you. Surah Nuh. It's towards the end of the Quran. Right? وَقَالُوا لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَاعًا وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَسْرًا. They enumerated the names of their idols. Don't abandon your gods. هذا في قوم نوح. والوتيرة واحدة من أول الكفار إلى آخرهم. However, the statements are redundant. The idea is one from the beginning of the kuffar until the end. They're going to share this kind of stuff. They all have the same kind of statement and reply. Don't abandon your gods. وَقَالُوا لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَاعًا وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَسْرًا. So these are the names of the 5 gods whom they did not wish to abandon. And of course we know that Allah Azza wa Jal drowned them. Allah drowned the people of Nuh because they refused to worship Allah Azza wa Jal alone. The Shaykh will mention something interesting inshallah, but we will postpone it till the next class, about some of the things which happen around the grave sites. Some of the things which happen around the graves. These graves you find all over the Muslim world, primarily in the Middle East, in the subcontinent, in many of the masajid in India and Pakistan, a masjid with a grave in there. Yes, barakallahu feek. Afwan, naam. Yeah, speak in English. So we will deal with some of that inshallah in bi'idhnillah azza wa jal in the next class. And until then we ask Allah to keep us firm on the deen and to make us among His righteous slaves. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. جزاكم الله خير. Tawheed is monotheism, yes. Shirk is polytheism. Poly, P-O-L-Y. Because theism and theist is the belief in God. So poly means multiple, and mono means one. Right? Wallahu a'lam. Shukran. Sorry for being late today, by the way, guys.